Welcome back to Birds of a Feather. This is your daily Baltimore sports podcast. My name is Nathan Stroud, and today we're going to be going over the official game preview for the Ravens versus Jets game tomorrow. Obviously, the Ravens play tomorrow against the Jets in the early slate of games, so you can kind of just get out of the way and just, enjoy football for the rest of the day, or don't enjoy football, depending on if we win or lose. But the Ravens do play the Jets tomorrow. Going to be a very, very interesting game. Should be a very fun game for all Ravens fans. Should be a very fun game. But it's the Baltimore Ravens, and they will do the most unexpected things sometimes, and they will play down to their opponents quite often. And this is one of those scenarios where, on paper, this is probably going to be the easiest game on the entire schedule for the entire season. But there's also a part of that that's a little bit scary because, again, we've seen this team play down to their opponents in years past, and you just never know what's going to happen. Any given Sunday is a legitimate thing in the NFL. We've seen huge upsets before. But, again, the Ravens have everything to play for right now, and it's kind of the same thing that I said about the Browns game last week where, the Ravens have everything to play for. The Jets have nothing to play for. You know what I mean? And sometimes that is the scariest thing sometimes in the NFL. But the Ravens are looking to win their fifth game in a row if they can beat the Jets tomorrow. Obviously, they beat the Bears without Lamar Jackson and a huge win with Tyler Huntley. They beat the Bears, they beat the Dolphins, they beat the Vikings, and then they beat the Browns this past week off of that late game heroics from Mr. Mark Andrews. So there's been some very close games here recently. The Vikings game was a one-score game, very stressful near the end, kind of a dogfight, when it really probably shouldn't have been. The Browns game last week, I mentioned that it was probably going to be a lot closer than a lot of people think. Divisional game, extremely good defense. That's not always the best recipe sometimes for a great game. And also earlier in the year, we blew out the Browns, so it would have been hard to kind of blow out a divisional opponent twice. With how good of a defense that they have. So last week's game against the Browns was very close. Obviously, there was lots of mistakes on offense, receivers, and just not being able to catch the ball. Hence the pick six that Lamar Jackson threw where it bounced off of Keane Mitchell's gloves. The offensive line completely collapsing last week. Lamar getting sacked 5 times. A ball getting tipped up in the air from the D-line because the pressure was just so much. That led to the other interception. So on paper, Lamar didn't have a great game last week, but if you watch the game, the offensive line was absolutely abysmal. And we're going into this game facing the Jets where the Jets defense is not too great. The Jets defense has been pretty solid for the past couple of years. But again, and I have to say this because it is a huge part of this Jets team, and it really kind of puts the standard and puts an outlook on what this Jets team is this year. The Jets traded Sauce Gardner and Quentin Williams. Those are their best 2 defensive players. You can argue it's their best 2 players on their team. They also don't have Garrett Wilson on offense. So the Jets don't have their 3 best players tomorrow. Plus, they're the New York Jets, who are, 2-8 or 2-9 on the season, and are the worst team in the NFL, in my opinion, and a team that is probably gonna take the first quarterback off the board in the draft. So, again, good teams beat bad teams. The Jets are not in your division. There is legit, like last week, I understand why the game could have been close. I mean, I said it. I like me and many others called that the game was going to be ugly, going to be sloppy, and I was worried about the game last week, and we were able to get through it. And even though it was the Browns, I'm still happy that they were able to pull together things at the end. Even when it was going bad for most of the game, they were able to pull together and win the game. This game against the Jets, there is legitimately no reason why you cannot go out there and destroy this Jets team. There is no excuse why you don't destroy this Jets team after back-to-back, hard, back and forth dogfight 1-score games against 2 teams that you were extremely better than, being the Browns and the Vikings. The past 2 games that you played were close. They were both 1-score games. Extremely, extremely bad red zone offense, just not being able to punch the ball in the end zone. No matter how good the drive is, they would get into the goal-to-go situations, they would get within the 20-yard line, they would get within the 5-yard line, and they just wouldn't be able to punch it in. And sometimes they'd be able to punch it in on a very, non-consistent basis, and that just made the box score and the total score in general look a lot closer. Because the Ravens, the past 2 games when they've really struggled in the red zone, it's not like they weren't moving the ball well downfield. You know what I mean? They were moving the ball well downfield. They were getting downfield, they were getting a good field position, and then they would just collapse in the red zone, settle for 3, or they'd go for it on 4th down and turn it over on downs and just waste the whole possession. So the past 2 weeks, and that's the main thing for this Ravens team. That is the biggest concern, in my opinion, is the red zone offense and the offensive line, and it kind of goes hand in hand in a way. The defense has been playing absolutely excellent over the past, 5 weeks or so. They held the Rams to below 20. They held the Dolphins to below 20. They held the Bears to below 20. They held the Vikings to below 20. They held the Browns to below 20. And now you're playing this Jets team that is this is the worst team we're going to play all year. And we're going to go over the spread in a second, but the Ravens are heavy, heavy favorites going into this game. I think that this is the biggest spread of the week of any game going on this weekend for the NFL. So the Ravens obviously have an extreme big advantage in this game. The Jets are also starting Tyrod Taylor at quarterback, which potentially actually could be better than Justin Fields. Justin Fields has not been good at all this year. He is obviously, dangerous on the ground, but in terms of his arm, he has passed for less than 70, 80 yards in some games. It's been pretty bad. So they benched Justin Fields, put in Tyrod Taylor. I think they do have a better chance to win with Tyrod Taylor than Justin Fields. But we'll see what ends up happening. Again, it's Tyrod Taylor. You cannot, guys. I'm not trying to be that guy, but it's 2025, guys. We gotta take care of business whenever it's in front of us. This Ravens defense is on a heater. They've been playing very well. I think that the confidence, the mentality is really there with this defense, and I think for defense, that's a big thing in general. I think having confidence in yourself. I think with the defense just playing as good as they've been, and again, I think having confidence that they can do good. I think having the confidence and seeing the having confidence is one thing, but actually seeing it pan out on the field and having results is another thing. They've been able to get takeaways. They've been able to get stops when they needed to. They've been making big time plays. I mean, you go back to the game against the Browns where Shedeur Sanders threw a ball to the end zone, pretty accurate ball, went right into the receiver's hands, and Chidobe Awuzie, one-on-one coverage, literally ripped it out of his hands, and it was an incompletion. An absolutely elite play by a corner. I think it was on 3rd and 10 or something like that to try and literally win the game, tie the game against the Ravens. So it's little plays like that have been really good recently. They've been able to get takeaways. It's been looking really good. They've been having confidence, and I think that's the biggest thing that they were lacking early on in the year. They had all the talent on the field early on in the year. Zach Orr had some struggles calling the defensive scheme, and I think that just seeing how many points they were giving up, the confidence was just erased from them. But all of a sudden, things really snapped in that game against the Rams. Even though we lost, the defense had a really good effort in that game. I mean, the Ravens only scored 3 points in that game, in that loss against the Rams. So you can't really blame the defense there. But the defense is really locked in. They've been playing great. I fully expect them to hopefully just get the good job done. And yeah, let's just go over this game preview real quick. And going over this game preview, again, guys, this should not be rocket science. The Ravens are currently sitting at 13.5-point favorites going into this game. That sounds like a lot because it is. I mean, I think it is legitimately the biggest spread of any game this entire weekend. I think the Lions and Giants game is probably a pretty big spread as well, and the Titans and Seahawks game. But this game, it's a 13.5-point spread. The Ravens are significant favorites in this game. For you to be considered, honestly, 11-plus point favorites in a NFL game, it has to be a pretty big mismatch, and that's what this is. The Ravens have historically played very good against the Jets in the past. Lamar's played very good against the Jets in the past. And yeah, going into this game, in terms of the Ravens' injuries, like we talked about the other episode where there was no Lamar Jackson, there was no Kyle Hamilton, Roquan Smith, Isaiah Likely, Ronnie Stanley. There was a ton of guys that were out of practice on Wednesday. But like I said, it was just a precautionary rest thing. Because, again, this Ravens team does play 2 games within a span of, a short amount of time. They play tomorrow on Sunday, and then they also have a quick turnaround to the Thursday night game on Thanksgiving primetime, which is going to be very interesting. And honestly, this game and winning this game is even more important now, knowing what we know about the game on Thursday against the Bengals, where it is most likely going to be Joe Burrow's return. So it is most likely that we're going to be seeing Joe Burrow on Thanksgiving primetime in his return against the Ravens. Bengals, Ravens, Burrow versus Lamar, they always are cinema games. They're always incredible games, and I'm sure that game is going to be incredible as well. But we'll get to that game, obviously, whenever we get there. But with Joe Burrow now playing for the Bengals most likely on Thursday, that makes this Jets game even more of a must-win. If the Ravens win this game, they will be 6-5, and they'll be above 500 for the first time all year. Again, this Ravens team started off 1-5. And I want to put a big emphasis on that because we were legitimately down in the dumps. Through 6 weeks of the NFL season, I think we had the third or second pick in the NFL draft if the season ended right there. So again, this team has been through a lot. This team has gone through so much in terms of having to kind of fight and crawl back. And while the schedule up to this point since the 1-5 start has not been hard necessarily, looking back on it, the win against the Bears honestly is pretty respectable now because the Bears have looked great. The Bears are 7-3, they've looked incredible, and we were able to beat them with no Lamar Jackson. So that was a big win. But wins against the Vikings, Browns, Dolphins, none of those are very convincing in a way. And this game won't be convincing either, to be honest with you guys. And again, I've said it before earlier on in the episode. The Ravens need to go out here and literally kill this Jets team. They have to blow this team out of the water. For how close and sloppy the offense has kind of been in the red zone over the past 2 games, they need to kind of regroup together against a New York Jets team that doesn't have their 3 best players in the game. They just traded their 2 best players on defense. They don't have Garrett Wilson on offense. So again, I'm not even really going to talk about the defense for the Ravens because I fully expect them to get the job done. They're playing Tyrod Taylor. It's going to change up the game plan a little bit. You don't really have to necessarily worry about the quarterback rushing as much, but Tyrod Taylor can still run the ball pretty well. He is obviously older. They have no Garrett Wilson. You're going to be having to guard guys like Donnie Mitchell, and I like Mason Taylor, and obviously their number one weapon on offense is 100% Breece Hall. So stopping the run is obviously going to be a big thing, but I fully expect the Ravens defense to win them this game. Not even that. I fully expect the Ravens defense just to get the job done. I'm talking about the Ravens offense. That is what I'm worried about. The Jets defense is not very good at all. Before they traded Sauce Gardner and Quinton Williams, their defense was pretty solid, And even now, they still have some pretty solid names on defense. Guys like Will McDonald, Jermaine Johnson, Quincy Williams. They have some good names on their defense, but none of those names are even close to resembling a Quinton Williams or a Sauce Gardner. So this Jets defense is obviously depleted, but they got to go out there and get the job done, man. This Ravens offense needs to kind of come together, figure it out, and the things that I'm going to be looking for most in this game is 100% the offensive line. I want to see Lamar Jackson have time in the pocket, have time to develop plays, have time to get the ball downfield and be the Lamar Jackson that we know. And I also want to see Lamar Jackson have time and have space to be able to take off if he wants to. And there's a bunch of people saying a bunch of different things about Lamar Jackson online. Some of it has to do with the fact that he's not playing 100%. And do I think that he's 100%? No, I don't. I don't think that Lamar Jackson is playing at 100% right now. I think that whenever we've seen him try to take off in the pocket and, go upfield with the ball, I will say he does not look as elusive right now. And I think a part of that does have to do with the injuries. But the injuries are really occurring because of how much he's getting hit. Lamar Jackson has gotten sacked, I think, 23 times this season, which is the most which is tied for the most in his entire career across a full season, and he's only played 7 games. Just to put in perspective how bad the offensive line has been. And I'll say this again, man. If Lamar Jackson is getting sacked as many times as he is, Lamar Jackson of all quarterbacks, if he's getting sacked this much, it's an even extra shame on the offensive line. You know what I mean? So, Lamar Jackson dealing with knee soreness, dealing obviously with that hamstring injury. Hamstrings are always weird. Again, it's also his first hamstring injury, so it could linger a little bit longer. He's out there playing. When he has time in the pocket to actually make plays downfield, he's been doing it. But it's kind of been a mess a little bit, especially in that Browns game. The pressure was on Lamar a lot. Obviously, they're playing against Myles Garrett, the best defensive player in football. So I understand the struggles there. But against a very depleted Jets defense, I fully expect Lamar Jackson to have time in the pocket to make plays downfield, have the ability to be able to rush upfield when he needs to, rush downfield whenever he needs to. And I also fully expect the run game to be working as well. Derrick Henry has been very on and off this year. And to be honest with you, if anyone was expecting Derrick Henry to replicate or do better than his 1,900-yard season last year, you're crazy. I'm going to be honest, you're crazy if you thought that he was going to do better than what he did last season. A lot of people obviously wanted him to run for 2,000 yards, which I did as well, obviously. I wanted him to run for 2,000 yards. Why wouldn't I? But it's been a very on and off year for Derrick Henry, and I'm not going to sit here and fully blame it all on the offensive line for his struggles a little bit. Because, I'm just going to say it. He's not as good as he was last year. And I'm just going to be real. And I think he agrees. I think just from the eye test of watching the games, I think you can see. He's not the same player. But he's not supposed to be the same player. I mean, he's a 31-year-old running back. Like, you have to kind of expect regression at some point. And I think it's starting for Derrick Henry. Last year, he looked like a bat out of hell. He looked incredible last year. For his age, he looked absolutely insane. The offensive line was giving him incredible holes to run through, and his speed, of anything, looked great. Derrick Henry's speed this year looks fine. I think he still has some of the fastest recorded top speed times in the NFL this year. So his acceleration looks fine. His speed looks fine. And again, a lot of the eye test situation does have to do with how bad the offensive line has been. There's been a lot of times this year where Derrick Henry's getting the ball and getting hit behind the line of scrimmage immediately. And I know it's Derrick Henry. I know he's someone that is extremely hard to tackle. But it kind of sometimes does get to a point where if the offensive line is playing so bad, it just doesn't make him look that good. It kind of reminds me a little bit of his late days in Tennessee in his final couple of years where he was still obviously a lethal running back that you have to look out for, but he wasn't necessarily going crazy every single game like he seemed to last year. The first couple of years last season, Derrick Henry didn't really do anything, and then we started actually giving him the ball, and then he was on a hot stretch last season. This year, it's been very on and off for Derrick Henry, and I do actually want to go and look at his stats this year because it's been very on and off for him, which is fine. He's still having a good year. He's still 6th in total rushing yards. He's 7th in carries, 7th in touchdowns. This is not bad. He is having a good year for running back. But from Derrick Henry standards, it's not necessarily amazing. But it's not even just him. You look around the league, Saquon Barkley, who ran for 2,000 yards last year, he is having a worse year than Derrick Henry is right now. I think a lot of that has to do with the offense that he's playing for and the dilemma going on with the Eagles right now. But I do want to go over to Derrick Henry. It's a hard conversation. Not really a hard conversation. He's been fine. But it is something worth noting because he has been very on and off. Going back to week 1, 18 carries, 169 yards, 2 touchdowns. He was absolutely incredible in that Bills game, picked up right where he left off last season, and that's where I didn't really worry. I was a little bit worried going into this year, okay, is Derrick Henry really going to be the same player? Just sign an extension to stay here for the next few years? Is he still going to be that same guy? And after week 1, I was like, yeah, 100%, he is still that guy. Then in week 2, he had legitimately one of his worst, I think, games of his professional football career, college and NFL and high school included, probably. I haven't really looked at the stats of everything, but I legitimately think that the week 2 game was the worst game of his career. He had 11 carries for 23 yards. He averaged 2.1 yards per carry. Obviously, the Ravens won this game 41-17. But 11 carries for 23 yards for Derrick Henry, that is crazy. Especially after coming off of a 169-yard game. He was obviously extremely good at start of the year, then dipped down, 11 carries, 23 yards, then had 12 carries for 50 yards and a touchdown. And speaking of the struggles early on in the season for Derrick, there is the fumble problem, if you guys remember. He fumbled in week 1, he lost that fumble late in the game, ended up being a big reason why we lost. Then fumbled in Cleveland, ended up recovering it, but still was a fumble. Then in Detroit, ended up fumbling the ball late in the game in the fourth quarter again, and was another big reason why we lost the game. And against Detroit, he was not really great. He had 12 carries for 50 yards, which isn't a great stat line, but 28 of those 50 carries came off of that one long touchdown run in the first quarter. Then against Kansas City, 8 carries for 42 yards, not good. Then 15 carries for 33 yards, not good. But these games right here, this Kansas City game, obviously we were getting blown out of the water early. Lamar Jackson went down, definitely affected Derrick Henry's usage or whatever. Then the Houston game, we were legitimately getting blown out from start to finish in that game. Obviously, we're not really going to run the ball as much as we want to, and the Texans the Texans defense is incredible. They did a really good job stopping them. These stretch right here, 23 yards, 50 yards, 42 yards, 33 yards. That is not the Derrick Henry I know. Then he really got it going against the Rams, and the Rams rush defense I think is actually the best rush defense in the NFL right now. And against the Rams, he was able to get 24 carries, which is the most he's had all year. 24 carries, 122 yards, doesn't get a touchdown, but still 122 rushing yards, back on track. Then he has 21 carries for 71 yards and 2 touchdowns. So the yards weren't necessarily that efficient for the carries, but he did punch in 2 touchdowns. Then against Miami, 19 carries for 119 yards. Bang, back on track. Then against Minnesota, very, very sloppy game. 20 carries for 75 yards. Got it going in the fourth quarter, but early on in that Vikings game, he was getting stuffed in that Vikings game early on. Then last game against Cleveland, 18 carries for 103 yards. Last game against Cleveland, again, Cleveland's defense is incredible, but he was getting stuffed for a majority of the game, and a lot of it is legitimately the fact that he's getting the ball, getting hit behind the line of scrimmage, there's 0 holes, and he's just running into a brick wall. Luckily, he was able to get a big 59-yard run, which then set up for the touchdown in that game. Oh, no, sorry. I actually don't think that set up for the touchdown. I think we actually settled for a field goal after that. But Derrick Henry had over 100 yards in last game, and he's facing a Jets defense that is bad against the run, and he's facing a team that we should have a big lead for a majority of this game. And Derrick Henry should be getting the ball a lot, especially later on in the game when we hopefully have a big lead and he can get those rushing yard numbers up. Because, I wouldn't be surprised if Derrick goes for 200, like deadass. I could legitimately see him going for 200 because, again, if this Ravens team can just kind of come together, if the offensive line can just give Lamar time, if the offensive line can just give Derrick Henry, even if it's not like the most wide open hole in the entire world to run through, if you can just give Derrick Henry some sort of running lane, get some blocks downfield for him, don't let him get hit behind the line of scrimmage. If you can just do the simple things on offense, coming together, playing the Ravens football that we know we can, being the dominant offense that we know we can be. It's been a little bit sloppy over the past couple of weeks, but again, you're playing a defense that is not great. Derrick Henry hopefully should be able to come out here, get some big runs in, and in the second half, when the Ravens are hopefully leading, can add on to that total. So hopefully that's what's going to end up happening tomorrow. But again, a big thing with this Ravens game is going to be just staying together on offense. The offensive line and the red zone offense is going to be the biggest things. When the Ravens get into the red zone, which they hopefully will be in the red zone quite a bit in this game, this is a great time and a great game, not to experiment necessarily, but this is a great time to get that red zone confidence and red zone offense back on track. The red zone defense for the Ravens defense has been incredible, but the red zone offense for the Ravens offense has been awful. Like the Ravens offense in the red zone with Derrick Henry, Lamar Jackson, Isaiah Likely, Mark Andrews, Charlie Kolar, Zay Flowers, DeAndre Hopkins. Legitimately, if you had to pick a team that would dominate in the red zone, I think that the Ravens team is literally built for the red zone. You know what I mean? It is built for short yardage situations. It's built for the red zone. And for some reason, that is legitimately the biggest struggle of this Ravens offense in terms of scheme and game plan, is their red zone offense, which doesn't really make any sense. And even short yardage situations they've had struggles with, which doesn't make any sense to me. I think Todd Monken just needs to calm down. I think he's had some good plays this year, but I also think that he has had some horrendous play calls this year in big situations. Just calm down, play it simple, do what you need to do, be the Ravens team that we know we can be, and just go out there and blow out this Jets team, man. It would be so nice for the Ravens to go out there and just get a nice 20-plus point victory win, and we could, get the win. Hopefully, we can be up by a lot of points going into the fourth quarter, and hopefully we can be at a point where we can sit our starters in the fourth and have Lamar Jackson resting in the fourth, having Derrick Henry resting in the fourth, having Zay Flowers resting on the bench in the fourth quarter. We can get these guys out of the game as soon as possible, and I say that because we have a very quick turnaround on Thursday Night Football. Well, not Thursday Night Football, but Thursday night on Thanksgiving prime time against the Bengals. It's going to be a huge game, very quick turnaround. You would love to kind of get a big lead, and I think of any team that you can kind of get a big lead on early and rest your starters, it would be against the Jets. So hopefully the Ravens just take care of business, don't play down to their opponent, and just get the job done. But thank you guys so much for tuning into and listening to this episode of Birds of a Feather. If you like this content, make sure to subscribe on YouTube, follow up on Spotify. Make sure to click the link in the bio to check out the Instagram and the Twitter. I post on Twitter all the time, so make sure to give that a follow. Make sure to give the Instagram a follow as well. Make sure to subscribe to the YouTube channel. Make sure to follow on the Spotify, whatever you're listening on. I appreciate all of you guys so much. Thank you all so much for all the support. This is episode 200 of Birds of a Feather. It's a lot of fun. Going to have improvements, going to have different production stuff going on throughout the rest of the season and, as stuff comes up. But obviously an exciting time. We got Ravens football. We got, obviously, a game tomorrow, game on Thursday. And then, obviously, Orioles free agency going on as well. So, again, I appreciate you guys so much. I'll see you guys tomorrow after the game for a recap. And I'll see you guys tomorrow. You have a great sales day. Go Ravens, and I'll see you later. Peace out.